Welcome to Chapter 3, where we're going to be talking about listening. But before we get to the material, I just want to go ahead and go over a couple of quick chapter reminders for you. First, as we go through this presentation, please make sure that you take notes as this will become your study guide. We won't be issuing a study guide for the test or for the final, so your notes become your study guide. Ensure that you read the chapter. Additionally, be able to make sure that you can both define and apply the key terms within the chapter. And finally, make sure you're able to answer the questions upon reading the chapter. Now let's take a look at Chapter 2, Listening. So in order for us to get a better understanding of listening, we have to look at both the idea of hearing versus the idea of listening. So when we look at hearing, this is the physical or the biological. So the hearing is the vibration of sound waves on the eardrums. So this either works or it doesn't. Listening is more along the psychological, where it's a choice. And listening is where we pay close attention to what we hear. So you decide as a listener whether or not you're going to actually focus on what is being said versus hearing, where you recognize that words and sounds are happening. So there are 4 types of listening that we're going to focus in on within this chapter. There are additional types out there, but these 4 are what we're going to take a look at. The first one we're going to take a look at is appreciative, then empathetic, comprehensive, and critical. So with these 4 different types of listening, we'll first start with the appreciative and then work our way through the list. So appreciative listening is where we're listening for pleasure and enjoyment. So the best example of this is when it comes to music. A lot of you have your own type of bands and genres that you listen to either pass the time or just relax. And this is a great example of appreciative listening. You're listening purely for pleasure and enjoyment. Second on our list was empathetic listening, and this is listening to provide emotional support for the speaker. One of the greatest examples of this is when we're interacting with young children and they trip and fall, and then they scream and cry extremely loud like the world is ending and they're going to die. We go ahead and comfort the child and remind them that it's okay, they'll be fine, and then 30 seconds later, they're up and running again. This is our good example of empathetic listening, where we're going to listen to provide emotional support for the speaker. Our third type of listening is comprehensive listening, and this is listening to understand a message. The greatest example of this is when you receive a voicemail on your cell phone and then you closely listen to what the person is saying in addition to the callback phone number that you need to call them back on. So comprehensive listening, listening to understand a message. Critical listening is listening to evaluate a message. So the best example of this is when your parents tell you no, or you know they're going to tell you no when you ask a question, you critically listen. You're listening to evaluate what they're saying so that you can then properly respond. So we talked about 4 different types of listening. First, we took a look at appreciative listening, and then we moved to empathetic listening, comprehensive listening, and then finally critical listening. So we're going to go ahead and take a look next at some ways that we can become poor listeners and not receive the message that's being delivered to us. So one of the causes of poor listening is just simply not concentrating. I don't know how many times I will say something or somebody else will say something and someone's got their earbuds in and they completely miss the conversation because they're not concentrating. on the conversation. Listening too hard, a lot of times when we are angry or upset, a lot of times we will then listen too hard to where we're so focused on what we want to say that we miss what is being said to us. Jumping to conclusions, and then focusing on the delivery and appearance of the presenter, not necessarily what they are saying. One concept with listening is the idea of spare brain time. And spare brain time is the difference between the rate of talk and the rate at which our brain processes language. So when the speed of the speaker or the information becomes too fast, we recognize that something is being said, but we don't quite understand what is being said. A great example of this is when you listen to commercials on the radio or commercials on TV. They will talk in a nice, even pace for the presentation of the product, the benefits of the products, and then they will go extremely fast at the end to talk about the negative consequences of the product or the limitation. So when you hear a commercial about a vehicle being sold, a lot of times they will go very fast at the end and they will say there's only one of these vehicles on the lot, where the assumption is by the customers that there are many vehicles on these lots. So the spare brain time was that difference between the rate of talk and the rate at which the brain can process language. And this varies between people. Some people can comprehend a faster rate of speed, wherein others might have to have a slower rate of speed. So we talked about what causes poor listening and the impacts of poor listening. Now let's take a look at some strategies to become a better listener. We'll take a look on this first slide, and then we'll finish up on the second slide with our strategies. So up first is take listening seriously. So make it a priority. Remove distractions and focus purely on what is being said. Be an active listener. Be present. Resist distraction. And don't be diverted by the appearance or the delivery. If somebody isn't making a presentation how you would, don't let this distract you from what is being said. And finally, suspend judgment. Develop note-taking skills and focus your listening. When we look at developing note-taking skills, especially when listening to a presentation, it is almost impossible to write down word for word what the presenter is saying. What's more important is to make sure that you summarize and synthesize what the speaker is saying, denoting what the main and key points are, in addition to any subpoints or examples provided. So we'll go ahead and wrap up chapter 3 with focused listening. And this is where we are focusing specifically on, first, what are the main points? What are the big picture ideas that the presenter is trying to make? What sort of evidence did they provide supporting those main points or points of analysis? And then finally, the technique. So as we finish up with chapter 3, I want to go ahead and go back over our reminders real quick before we're done today. First, make sure that you have taken some sort of notes over this presentation, so if you need to go back, feel free to do so, as this will become your study guide for both the test and for the final. Ensure that you've read the chapter And after reading the chapter, make sure that you're able to define and apply the key terms within the chapter. And then additionally, make sure you're able to answer the questions at the end of the chapter.